You're listening to the audio portion of Workshop Wednesdays. Workshop Wednesdays is a free live discussion about topics affecting accountants, bookkeepers, and business owners. You can join the ABO group in Facebook to participate live Wednesdays at 10 a.m. Pacific Time. Just search for ABBO in Facebook. This podcast is brought to you by Schoolofbookkeeping.com, where you will learn, grow, and build a thriving bookkeeping practice. We have hundreds of lessons with almost every aspect of the industry. Start your free month today at Schoolofbookkeeping.com. So welcome to another Workshop Wednesday. My name is Dan DeLong, and I'm with
Carrie Kahn.
And we're with School of Bookkeeping, bringing you a weekly workshop of stuff to do inside of QuickBooks and to build your practice and make your workflows faster and easier and more efficient. So we try. So this week, we're starting a series or really kind of taking a little deeper dive into some of the accountant only tools in both QuickBooks Online and Desktop. Of course, the QuickBooks Online part of that is it's already done. We've already talked about it. It's a course. It's already on School of Bookkeeping. You can go through and see those accountant tools. It's inside of the QuickBooks Online Accountant course. But we're also going to take that component and pull that out as and expand on it a little bit. And we want to give Desktop some love because that's Carrie's favorite topic. You love the Desktop, right?
I love the Desktop. It's so full of features. And every time we go in there, we find something new, some little Easter egg that
like what we
didn't realize was there.
What we talked about last week, where you can make those automatic adjustments just by using the client data tool or client data review tool and troubleshooting account balances tool right inside of QuickBooks on Desktop. I almost said
that's right. It's not in online.
It is not in online.
But we do have that tool also in our School of Bookkeeping resources.
Right. We have a built-in or a template, an Excel template that you can do just that, so that you can do it inside of QuickBooks Online if you're online only or if you have an online client. So today we're actually going to be talking about some of the future tools that we'll be talking about is like fixing sales tax payments and payroll liability payments that were entered incorrectly, because this will all be in service to, how do you do some of this cleanup work that some clients come to you with, like, oh, my QuickBooks is a mess. And
it should only take you 5 minutes to fix it. Just take
what you're doing, right?
You've heard those conversations, right? You're really good here. I promise it won't take you long at all. This shouldn't be billable.
Right. And get it back to me tomorrow because my taxes are due.
Yeah. By the way, I'm trying to do financials for a bank. I need it done yesterday. Oh, okay, good.
How do you have that, Carrie? How do you have that conversation, right? When a client is assuming that your biz, what you do won't take long at all, and they can be.
Oh, that's really tricky. So you start to say things like, I've heard that before, or if you can turn it back to their business and have it so that they understand, like, let's say you're a doctor and I bump into you in the grocery store, you gonna be able to diagnose and fix me right there? No. Right. So I try to figure out what their industry is and speak their language. You're really good at that. I struggle a bit, but I've seen you in action on that. Gotcha. I think that's the best way, is so that they can understand. You can just say, that I've heard people say that to me before, and it usually is at least an hour. Or this is where you can say, let me just take a look, rent me for the hour and let me give you a full report back on what I find in that hour.
Right. So maybe coming up with a diagnosis service, right? Kind of like what what contractors would do is, the trip charge, right? I mean, their time is something, just to come out there, just to look at what's in, but they don't know what they're in for, when you say, oh, my dryer is squeaking, right?
Right.
That could be a lot of different things. And I'm using that as an example because that actually happened to me. My dryer was squeaking, and the first time they came out, they thought it was a belt thing. And then, it worked for like 2 days. As soon as they shut the door and, demonstrated that it wasn't squeaking, we thought we were done. But then 2 days later, it was squealing worse than before, right? And it was actually one of those little wheels that was grinding against itself, making the dryer spin around. But they didn't charge me the second time to come back out. They just had to figure out what the part was, order the part, and come back again, and they were done. So it wasn't like I said, well, fix the squeaking, what's it going to cost, right? I mean, that sort of thing. But that was that kind of example. And to your point, putting it in terms of the business is a great way to make sure that they're not devaluing your time or expertise.
And that I think that often happens. You probably find this too. It's worse with people that your friends and family will take full advantage of you. But if you can make it more of a business relationship and just give them an hour, they can see how you can work. What you can get done in an hour. They'll be able to see the value in that. And, maybe you just take a look at it for an hour and you might be able to fix it, like the trip charge he's talking about. But maybe you, at the end of the call, don't give promises that I can fix it in an hour. Just say, after I have a time to look under the hood for a bit, maybe in an hour, I'll have some ideas or some more, oh, now that I've looked at your payroll, you'll at least have some information about this is what needs to be done to fix it. This may take me another hour, or here's the instructions for you to do it.
Right. I mean, it's the thing that pops into my mind is like you go into a restaurant and you say to the waiter, I'm hungry, right? That's a given. But he doesn't know what your tastes are. He doesn't know, what you're hungry for, right? You may be gluten intolerant. All those things are under the surface, that they need to find out, before recommending the special.
Right.
There's no one size fits all type of thing.
No.
But that's not what we're talking about today. We
really derailed.
We got sidetracked on a discussion, but a valuable,
so important,
valuable discussion to have. So we're going to be talking about some of these tools of how to fix these sort of things. And they're all a lot of them are based on this concept in QuickBooks of a check, right? And now we're going old school of a check. And who writes checks anymore, right? Like who actually walks around with a checkbook and writes checks, right? And
here's
that's
your
typically
birthday check.
How old are you? All right, that's how much.
There you go. Yeah, $10 for every year. Oh.
Oh, wow. How do I get involved in that family?
Yeah, I know. I'm thinking, no, we don't do it that way, but I just made that up.
Oh.
But no, she still hands me a check. We have Venmo, we have PayPal, we have ways to get paid.
Right.
But yeah, people still write checks. So.
Right. And so what we're going to talk about today is really one of the fundamental truths of QuickBooks is that a check to QuickBooks is money leaving an account, is money leaving a bank account, right? So a lot of the functionality that's going to be built inside of QuickBooks is based off of you writing a check, even though that check is not a physical piece of paper that you're handing somebody, but it's a bank account, a banking transaction that money is leaving that account, and then you can offset that.
Right,
like a category or an item.
If you're paying your sales tax online, you need to record that in your QuickBooks, and so that's what he means.
Right. So that's going to be a check, meaning that the money's leaving the bank account. But QuickBooks now is going to be calling. There's special types of checks and special special transaction types that are that have some special functionality tied to them, but they are at their core a check, right? So
Right.
again, same fundamental, money is leaving a bank account,
Right.
but when you pay sales tax, it's a special check called a sales tax payment, right? And that's where you end up finding a lot of these
A lot of mistakes.
because client said, "Oh, I wrote it from my bank account. It's a check." And even
And
though, and to make it even more confusing, it wasn't a check. It was an ACH or a wire transfer or an ATM, debit transaction.
yeah.
All of that is a check to QuickBooks, but now it's a special check, which is a sales tax payment is a special type of check that only impacts sales tax.
And to make it more interesting, QuickBooks is trying really hard to help you keep up with what you owe as you're running your business. So if you don't use the feature to write a sales tax payment out and doing the workflow properly, you've got a mess on your hands.
Right. So we'll talk about some of these tools that some of the tools that we'll be talking about is a find and fix, which is like super easy because and we'll go into it a little deeper, but sales tax, for example, if they just wrote a check and offset it to sales tax payable, bad idea.
No.
Right. Your sales tax liability report is going to be all off. And when you go to pay sales tax, it's not going to be the right amount because you didn't use a sales tax payment check.
It broke the tool.
Yeah, it holds true in QuickBooks and desktop and online. So either case, but in the challenge is you find this out after the bank accounts
they've already done it.
They've already reconciled it.
Yeah.
The only way to fix it, you can't turn it into a sales tax payment, but so you don't, so now you have considerations of your reconciliation. You have to undo the reconciliation just to fix this one transaction to go and then re-reconcile it, or you delete that payment and do what's called a mini reconciliation just for that one transaction. Now you've got two reconciliations on your hands for the same time period.
To me, it's like you've knit a blanket and you get to the end and then you realize you skipped a stitch along the way. So there's different ways to put that back in. Now, knitting a blanket, it probably literally is rip it and start. I mean, starting over is one way to do it. And honestly, when I first started out, that's what I just wouldn't charge for it. I'm like, oh, I'm so embarrassed. Undo. And I'd redo it, do it right, all the way back to the beginning. And that's how I learned the proper workflow. So that's one way to do it. But I promise you, your customers will not want to pay for that.
Right. And, especially since they already darned quite a few other stitches at that point.
And if that's messed up, that payroll tax is messed up and so on.
Right. But there is a tool right inside of QuickBooks Online or desktop, not online.
Hush. Yeah. Desktop.
Right inside a desktop that will find those incorrectly recorded transactions, void them and replace them and maintain the integrity of your reconciliation all in one fell swoop. So that is like the super easy tool. But again, a lot of people just don't even realize it's there, right? Because as we talked about, last week, is that client data review is one of those tools and things that people don't even realize is even there to begin with.
And I'll tell you why. I know why, Dan.
Oh,
because it depends on where your journey is. I mean, I started using QuickBooks 30 years ago. So I had learned how to unravel my blanket, figure it out, not charge a client, and lose a lot of sleep over it, trying to figure out how to do it right in the beginning. Then along the journey comes these tools. Well, by then I already had my method and I figured out my own version of workaround. So I didn't bother to take a peek at that. So it's definitely worth slowing down, spend a Friday afternoon, really digging in and learning what those tools can do for you. Test it out.
Yeah.
So you can be confident in it.
So sales tax payments are one of those special checks.
Yes.
Paychecks are another type of special check, right? So you can have a check that impacts, the financial ramifications of a paycheck, but it doesn't have the functionality of a paycheck. And when we're talking about paychecks, we are talking about using the payroll services inside of QuickBooks, either online or desktop. Because the only way that you will get a paycheck is by using the integrated services inside of QuickBooks to begin with. But if you have a check that's written to an employee, that's not a paycheck, right?
Wow.
You may think it's a paycheck, but if you have, it has to be a type of transaction that is a paycheck. And the big thing about that is that you won't be able to run reports, payroll reports built into QuickBooks if they're not that type of special transaction. So there's going to be some payroll liabilities and taxes that are going to be associated with the creation of those paychecks, which leads to the next special check, which is a payroll tax check. So the yin and the yang to the to the special checks when it comes to payroll is the paychecks, they increase the liabilities, and then the payroll liabilities check, or the payroll tax check in QuickBooks Online will offset that. And the reason they're, what's the functionality? I've been yammering on here about these two types of checks. What's the special functionality, Carrie, about paychecks? Because you love payroll, but you don't do it.
I love payroll. Okay, so the secret to payroll and doing those cleanups, which if anyone loves these cleanups, it's a lot of money in it, but you have to have people willing to pay. So they set it up, make a disaster, and create all kind of drama. That's another story. But the secret is to map it, to set those mappings. And if you just simply go by what QuickBooks does, they do just two terrible words: payroll expense and payroll liabilities. So to me, take that one more layer, even if you do a sub, make it payroll liability for your 941 tax and so on, whatever you want to call it. So you keep those separated. You run the payroll, you're withholding all these buckets, and then you want to make sure it gets paid in the right bucket and zeroes out. But if you just wing payroll, it's a mess and it's hard to find stuff.
And people do this, and people do the exact same thing like they do for payroll, or like they do for sales tax.
Yes.
With payroll liabilities, they just write a check, post it to that account, and then there's alerts inside of QuickBooks that say they still owe the liabilities when they've already paid it, and then you have to kind of again peel back the stitching to try to figure out what it is that they actually did. So there's ways and tools inside of QuickBooks to find those things faster. It doesn't have an automatic fix, unfortunately, like sales tax, but there are ways to correct those things inside of the payroll system without modifying your reconciled check transaction.
Right. And
we'll talk about that in a
workshop. I was going to say, and I learned that the hard way, but mapping is definitely a first step, understanding so you can diagnose which little pocket it's messed up.
Yeah. And then, so we talked about sales tax payments,
payroll tax,
payroll liabilities, bill payments is another special check that only has certain functionality tied to it. Now, as the name implies, it's when you're paying bills, right? So boy,
have I seen that messed up. So what happens is the customer comes to you and they don't understand accounts payable at all. They don't realize that it's designed to put bills into the right time frame. If you have an electric bill for February, they're just writing a check in March that it's paid, and so then March has two deductions for your electric bill, and it just doesn't really give you good management reports. So they're bypassing, they might leave the bill open and then write a check. It's a disaster. But if you get that workflow, you get that train, as I call it, putting that train back on the tracks, get that workflow working, then it is designed as it's supposed to be, and you can get better management reports. That's the whole name of the game, is to be able to get the good reporting out of the software.
Yeah, and this could cause them to even like the other situations, their accounts are correct, but this could cause a huge amount of double entry or double accounting for their expenses. If they created a bill but then paid it with a check that's written to the exact same expenses that the bill was written to.
Yes. So then what happens at tax time? They think they didn't make any money and they have to pay taxes.
Yeah.
So I want to fix that.
Right. Before it's a surprise.
Yes.
All right, so that I think that's all the special checks. Did I so we had sales tax, payroll, paychecks, payroll liability checks, bill payment checks.
Okay. The only other checks that are kind of not really a check, but kind of, is when you invoice someone and you have to refund them. You write a check, or you do it the method. That's just sort of a little off, but
yeah, it's but they don't have a special functionality tied to it. But there is workflow when you do refund somebody. What do you do with that refund? QuickBooks Online calls them a refund receipt. You could do credit memos, and refund checks in desktop. So there's some refund.
Yeah. Or refund it the same method that it came back in. There's all kind of things, but
right.
Yeah.
But there are there's some tools to help identify these special checks that were entered incorrectly and how they can be corrected, and make quick work of the cleanup piece when you're taking that on with your clients.
Take a look
but
at that.
we wanted to talk a little bit about the foundation of what is a check and what are these special checks and why are they even important, because when you start to get into some of these tools, that'll make a little bit more sense as to
what you're
why this is broken to begin with, and so why do we need to fix it even in the first place.
That's right.
So next weeks we'll be talking about some of these find fix tools or find tools that are inside of QuickBooks Desktop, and we look forward to seeing you next week on another Workshop Wednesday.
Workshop Wednesday.
Have a great week.